The room was filled with tension, thick enough to slice through. As Alex stood just outside the boardroom door, he could feel his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He had waited years for this moment, and now it was finally here. He was about to step into a world he had wanted to change, a world that had often overlooked him. The air inside the boardroom was cool, but it felt hot against Alex's skin. He could hear the muffled voices of the board members talking. They were discussing numbers, comparing profits, planning budgets, but he waited in silence, taking a deep breath, centering himself. Moments like this were about more than just reports and figures. It was about vision, about what lay beyond the balance sheets. Each tick of the clock echoed in his mind. All eyes would be on him soon. He adjusted his tie, a simple black one that felt more like a noose than a fashion choice. More than just a piece of cloth, it represented his journey. A journey that had started at the very bottom, working late nights just to prove himself. With another deep breath, he opened the door. In that moment, the conversations inside ceased. Every head turned to look at him. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to disbelief. To them, he was just another employee. To him, he was about to claim the respect he had fought for. "Good morning, everyone," Alex said, his voice steady, even though his insides felt like a ball of fire. He stepped into the room with purpose, moving toward the large table that dominated the space. There were 15 seats, all already occupied. He found the chair at the head, glimmering under the lights above. He was not just stepping in as a participant, he was stepping in as the new chair of the board. He took his seat, feeling the significance of that simple action. He could sense the surprise rippling throughout the room. They were still trying to make sense of who he was and what he represented. A few familiar faces looked at him with skepticism, the same faces that had doubted him in meetings past. As he settled in, he glanced around. Some were already flipping through their notes, others exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to this new dynamic. Alex had an uphill battle to face, but he was ready. He had spent countless evenings going over his vision for the company, how it needed to evolve to meet the challenges of the future. "Let's start with a discussion," he said, breaking through the silence that had settled in. "I want to hear about our strengths and our weaknesses." One of the older board members, a man named Greg, scoffed. "And what makes you think you can lead this discussion?" Alex met Greg's gaze, unflinching. In that moment, Alex felt a spark ignite within him. He was not going to back down, not now. Greg pressed, crossing his arms. "I have seen every department," Alex replied, his voice gaining strength. "I know the challenges each team faces. I understand our employees and their needs." There was a moment of silence again, this time charged with curiosity. The board members began to shift in their seats, some leaning in slightly. Alex could feel the attention shifting. He continued, "I've been in the trenches with everyone else. I know what it feels like to work every weekend just to ensure we meet a deadline." He could see they were listening now. The room was filled with something different, an energy he had not felt just moments ago. When people are passionate, it shines through, it becomes contagious. "We can change our approach," he insisted. Slowly, one woman at the table, Linda, raised her hand. She asked, curiosity in her tone. Alex smiled. He was ready for this question. "I want each department to hold strategy sessions over the next month." An undercurrent of murmurs washed over the room. Some nodded in agreement while others still looked skeptical, but he had them thinking. Greg leaned back, folding his arms. Alex knew this was the crux of the matter. "We start with small, achievable goals, one step at a time, but it begins with trust. I need each of you to bring your expertise to the table. If we don't work together, we will stay stagnant." For the first time, he could see nods of understanding. It was a subtle shift, but it meant something. It meant he was being heard. Alex let that idea settle for a moment. "Each of us wants the same thing," he continued. "We want this company to succeed." Greg shifted, and Alex caught a flicker of respect in his eyes. For the first time in this room, he felt the walls start to crack. "Maybe you have a point," Greg said, his voice quieter now, more thoughtful. The conversation started to flow, ideas building on one another, bouncing around the room. Alex felt the energy shift. He realized everyone had contributions to make, and slowly they began to offer solutions, identify problems. He guided the conversation, weaving through feedback like a conductor leading an orchestra. The dialogue deepened, minds opened. Minutes passed, and what felt like an eternity quickly morphed into a sense of teamwork. There was a newfound momentum in the air. "Great," Alex said, feeling a spark of excitement. "Let's narrow down our ideas. We have the potential to make this company a leader in our industry." As they began sorting through their ideas, Alex leaned back in his chair, feeling the thrill rush over him. This wasn't just him leading anymore. This was a unified group taking ownership of their future. He had walked into that boardroom as an underdog, but he was suddenly part of something larger than himself. 5 hours later, the meeting began to wind down. They had set goals better than anyone had expected, and they all felt empowered. Alex stood up, sharing a final thought. "This is just the beginning. Together, we will write a new chapter for our company." Applause erupted in the room. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was genuine. Alex felt a wave of emotion rush over him. This had been more than a meeting, it had been a revival. He looked around, seeing respect reflected back at him, understanding that today was not just a new role for him, but a new era for them all. As he stepped out of the boardroom, he felt lighter, almost as if he was floating. He hadn't just walked in as the new chair, he'd earned a new identity among his peers. This was his moment, the year he had worked toward. He took a deep breath as the door clicked shut behind him. It was finished for today, but the real work was just beginning. The doors of the boardroom swung open, and in that moment every head turned. The room, filled with stern faces and whispered conversations, froze as Alex stepped inside. Silence blanketed them like a heavy fog. He had waited 5 long years for this moment, his moment. The moment he would not just walk into this boardroom, but claim it as his own. Alex took a deep breath, remembering the battles he fought just to get to this point. He had started at the very bottom, an intern, shadowing in corners, learning the company's ins and outs. He had listened to the whispers of doubt when he suggested ideas, always cautious, always careful. But today that felt like another lifetime. Today he was no longer the invisible man. He walked confidently to the head of the table, each step resonating with a purpose that made the leaders of the company sit a little straighter. They had expected a different kind of leader, perhaps someone older, someone with more ties to the old guard. They didn't expect him. They certainly didn't expect the fire that simmered just beneath the surface. As he took his seat, the members exchanged glances, fascinated, skeptical, and intrigued all at once. There was Greg, the seasoned member known for his sharp tongue and an even sharper pencil. He raised an eyebrow, and Alex felt the immediate weight of expectation fall upon him. Alex decided to shatter the tension like glass. "Thank you all for being here today. I know this is a lot to take in." His voice was steady, unwavering. He could feel that familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins, a surge of energy he had learned to harness into words. "We face challenges ahead, challenges that will require us to think differently, to evolve." Greg leaned back, his skepticism unmasked. "And you think that coming in with fresh ideas is enough?" Alex could feel the eyes on him sharpening, an urgent call to defend his right to be in that chair. "Experience is valuable," he replied, calm but fierce. "But sometimes fresh eyes can see what seasoned ones overlook. I've been in the trenches with every department. I know our employees and their struggles. They don't need an experienced leader who talks at them." He could see a few of them nodding, a spark igniting in their eyes. The power of belief was alive in the room. Alex pushed on, fueled by his own conviction. "Every single one of us wants this company to succeed. When we feel heard, when we feel valued, we perform better. That's how we rise." Just then, Linda, a young but seasoned analyst known for her sharp insights, shifted in her chair. She looked up from her notes, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. She asked, genuinely interested. Alex seized the opportunity, feeling the energy intensifying. "We need to start with open forums, places where every employee can voice their ideas and concerns. We can't just rely on top-down communication." The room buzzed with whispered exchanges, people weighing his proposition. This was what Alex had hoped for. Collaboration was the pulse that would drive them forward. Greg scoffed again, but Alex sensed a crack in his facade. "And those forums are just empty words without direction." "Then let's create incentives," Alex shot back. "Lunchtime brainstorming sessions where every idea, no matter how wild, is celebrated." A murmur swept through the room, a hint of intrigue. He noticed Greg tapping his fingers, a sign of his own internal struggle. Change was a hard pill for the old guard to swallow, but Alex's heart raced with the belief that they were breaking through. "We can't deny that our industry is shifting," he pushed. "New players are emerging, and they're not afraid to challenge the status quo." Gradually, the atmosphere began to shift more tangibly. Ideas began to bounce off the walls. Some members started discussing the importance of team-building activities, while others thought about redesigning workplace spaces to encourage creativity. With each passing minute, Alex felt his confidence swell. He was no longer just the newcomer, he was the catalyst for a transformation. As he worked to steer the conversation with skill, he could see those skeptical faces start to soften, a mixture of admiration and respect slowly emerging. "Let's also focus on training and mentorship," he added, leaning in as if to emphasize his words. A distant voice chimed in, and he could see smiles starting to form. Alex knew this was a turning point. Yes, the enthusiasm began to unfurl in the room. Hands were raising, ideas were flowing. He could feel how powerful it was to be in this very moment, to witness a room full of brilliance igniting. But just as he caught a glimpse of victory, Greg interjected again. "Just thinking positively won't fix our issues." Retrieving his composure, Alex nodded. This was the dance of leadership, navigating doubt while radiating confidence. Real change takes time and effort, yes. For the first time today, Alex felt the room shifting fully behind him. They were on a brink, a moment when the collective power of belief could open doors that had always been closed. He glanced around, locking eyes with several board members. "Let's start with a commitment. Each of us should champion at least one new initiative. Let's put action behind our words together." Finally, Greg appeared to relent, his expression softening. A wave of agreement washed through the room, people nodding and looking around. The energy had transformed into a powerful collective, the air thick with potential. As they began mapping out paths forward, ideas flourished: workshops, employee-led committees, redesigned spaces, all powerful tools to enhance their workplace culture. Alex felt a rush of satisfaction and excitement, as if they were carving a new path together, one that didn't yet exist but was tangible in the air. Hours passed, yet they were only beginning to scratch the surface. From detailed strategies and timelines to brainstorming names for initiatives, collaboration was blossoming. Each person felt seen and valued. Alex knew this was just the beginning, but it was monumental. Finally, things were looking bright, crackling with potential. He felt the depth of gratitude wash over him as this boardroom of once skeptical members turned into a hive of creativity and respect. Finally, the meeting drew to a close. The board members looked exhausted yet invigorated, energized by the possibilities lying ahead. Alex took a moment to soak in their expressions: hesitant grins and firm nods of approval. He had forged something magical today. Standing up, he addressed the room one last time. "I want you all to know this is your victory as much as it is mine. I am here to uplift us all, to be your voice, and to ensure every idea we discuss sees the light of day." As he walked towards the door, he could feel the weight lift from his shoulders. Each step felt lighter and each moment heavier with the gravity of what had just occurred. He had walked into that boardroom underestimating how powerful a shared vision could be, and now he understood. The true strength of leadership lay in empowering others. As he stepped out of the boardroom, the door closed softly behind him. Today had been monumental, but the real work was just beginning. He would champion this journey, navigate the twists and turns, and ensure they would succeed, not just as individuals, but as a unified force. And that sensation of being in the right place would stay with him, guiding him into every challenge waiting ahead. The air in the corridor felt heavy with anticipation, each tick of the clock echoing like a countdown to a long-awaited moment. Alex stood outside the boardroom, heart racing, palms sweating. Today was not just any day. Today he would step into that room not as an underdog, but as the new chair. He took a deep breath, feeling the coolness of the wall behind him as he steadied himself. He had waited years for this opportunity, endured countless late nights, and faced overwhelming doubt. Just a few years ago, he was the quiet intern, invisible in meetings where big names and titles commanded attention. Now he was ready to make his voice heard. With his chest out and chin held high, Alex pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room went completely silent. 15 pairs of eyes turned to him, some filled with disbelief, others laced with skepticism. The members of the board were not just colleagues, they were titans, each one of them a veteran with more experience than he could fathom. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice echoing off the polished wood of the table and high ceilings. He felt the weight of their gazes upon him, a mixture of judgment and curiosity, but he didn't waver. This was his moment to claim. As he walked toward the head of the table, Alex felt the memory of all the times he had imagined this moment flood back to him. As a child, he had always been the one who stood in front of the mirror, practicing speeches he would give one day. Now he wasn't just playing a part, he was living it. With every step, he felt the adrenaline surge through him, the electric thrill of possibility igniting deeper within. He took his seat, the leather chair familiar yet formidable. All eyes remained on him, weighing him like a book still sealed in plastic, a mystery to be unwrapped. "I want to start our meeting today by acknowledging the hard work each of you puts in daily." A few nods surfaced around the table, a glimmer of interest breaking through their icy expressions, but he could see the questions lining their faces. Most of these people had held their positions far longer than he had been in the field. Greg, a senior board member with graying hair and an air of authority, leaned forward, arms crossed. He didn't just ask it, he challenged him. There it was, the first real hurdle. Alex took a breath. "I believe we need to adapt. The market is changing faster than we are. Customers want innovation and they want to feel valued. If we don't pivot now, we risk losing everything we've built. I suggest we make our decision-making process more inclusive." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Alex could see some eyebrows raised, fingers tapping nervously on the wooden table. He pressed on, feeling a rhythm begin to form. "We've been working in silos for too long. Each department has valuable insights, but those insights often go unheard. I propose we create task forces with representatives from every level of our organization." Greg's skepticism only sharpened. "It sounds nice, but how do you plan to get people to participate?" Alex met his gaze directly, holding his ground, because many of us remember what it felt like to be overlooked. When someone feels their contribution is valued, they want to be a part of something bigger. There were murmurs in the room now, a soft rustling as members exchanged thoughts. For the first time, he saw their expressions shift hesitation to contemplation. Alex felt the tide beginning to turn. "It's not just about making changes," he continued, sensing momentum. "It's also about empathy. Each employee has their own set of experiences, their hurdles to overcome. Being a leader means not just giving orders, but also listening." Linda, who had always been supportive but quiet, finally spoke up. "How do you propose we encourage everyone to share their ideas?" "Great question," Alex said, feeling a surge of excitement at the possibilities. We'll start by hosting informal roundtable discussions where everyone can freely voice their ideas without fear of judgment. Meetings should be about dialogue, not just monologue. Just then he noticed Greg furrowing his brow, deep in thought. Alex seized the moment, sensing that the tide was shifting. Change can be scary, especially for those of us who have been in the same routine for years. I understand that, but growth can't happen without discomfort. Silence enveloped the room. He could feel their minds racing, processing his words. Alex took the opportunity to lean in further. This isn't just about changing policies, it's about transforming the culture. Engaged employees lead to happy customers, which leads to growth. Greg shifted in his chair, finally uncrossing his arms. You make a strong case, Alex, but how do we ensure accountability in this new approach? Absolutely, Alex replied, a spark of hope igniting in him. We need measurable goals. Each team should set targets based on the new initiatives and regularly report back on their progress. One of the older members, Thomas, who had remained silent until now, suddenly interjected. Of course, Alex nodded, embracing the challenge. Every change comes with risks, however we can minimize them by collaborating. By diversifying our input, we can better anticipate challenges and devise solutions early. As the ideas continued to roll, a sense of unity started to form. The board members began to build on one another's thoughts, expressing their own doubts alongside their hopes, creating a tapestry of ideas that spanned generations. They discussed everything from team-building retreats to reorganizing the way they communicated strategies. Hours passed, but it felt like mere minutes. Alex felt the room come alive, the air thick with a shared passionate determination. This was no longer just his vision. It had transformed into a collective dream, one where everyone felt they had a hand in shaping the future. Near the end of the meeting, as their discussions began to wind down, Alex looked around the table. Some members who had expressed doubts were now looking forward to the work ahead. It was a small victory, yet it felt monumental. Each of us has a role to play in this journey, he concluded, feeling the exhilaration build inside him. Let's commit to each other, to volunteering our time and energy to this process. We're not just about profits, we're about people. The room erupted in applause, a release of the tension that had gripped them for hours. It was a moment of triumph, not just for Alex, but for the entire board. They had reshaped their narrative in real time, banding together to embrace a fresh perspective. As the clapping subsided, the members began to stand. They exchanged looks of camaraderie, smiles that had once been obscured now bright with hope. Greg approached Alex, a genuine grin on his face. You've surprised me, kid. Thank you, Alex replied, feeling the weight of years of work lift off his shoulders. Hearing those words from someone like Greg meant everything. It felt like a bridge had been built, a connection forged in that moment. As the board members filed out, Alex lingered behind, taking it all in. The room that had once felt imposing now felt like a space ripe with opportunity. He had stepped inside as a newcomer, but he was leaving with a sense of belonging, purpose solidifying within him. He stepped out of the boardroom and into the corridor, taking a deep breath, the cool air rushing into his lungs. Today marked a new chapter, not just for him, but for everyone involved. The journey ahead would be challenging, no doubt. There would be pushback, growing pains, and difficulties ahead, but he felt ready. As Alex walked away, he carried with him the resolve to push forward, knowing that they were about to embark on an extraordinary journey of transformation together. He had waited in silence, but now his voice would reverberate throughout the company, shaping the path they would take in the months to come. The possibilities were endless, and today was just the beginning. The clock struck 9, and as the chime faded, a profound silence washed over the hallway outside the boardroom. Alex stood just beyond the door, heart pounding against his ribcage like a trapped bird. He could hear the murmurs within, a blend of hushed apprehensions, quiet judgments, and lingering disbelief. His hand rested on the polished wood of the door, and he felt the weight of it. This door was the threshold to his future, and he paused, taking a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Years of hard work had led him to this moment, years of proving himself in a world that often overlooked the quiet ones, the ones who carried ideas rather than titles. Today, he was not just stepping into the boardroom as an invitee. Today, he would walk in as the new chair. With one determined push, he opened the door, feeling eyes turn, expectations shifting like the air around him. "Good morning, everyone," he declared, his voice steady. The boardroom was a stunning blend of modern elegance and corporate rigor, glass walls, gleaming tables, and sleek chairs like sentinels awaiting their leader. Around the table sat familiar faces, his colleagues, his peers, the giants of industry. They paused in their conversations, expressions frozen in astonishment. This was the moment he had envisioned countless times, and he would seize it. With purposeful strides, he moved to the head of the table, the top chair gleaming under the bright lights. Taking his seat, he felt the cool leather against his back, and for a second it felt like he had finally come home. "Thank you for gathering today," he continued, allowing his gaze to sweep across the room. He could sense the weight of their curiosity, and he embraced it. Greg, the most seasoned executive in the room, leaned slightly forward, eyebrows raised. His voice was smooth yet edged with skepticism, a reminder that change in a boardroom was often met with resistance. Alex took a moment, feeling the intensity of the question. Because today we're not just discussing numbers or targets. Today we're taking a hard look at who we want to be as a company. The world around us is evolving. Our clients are changing. A murmur of discontent rippled through the room. He could see Greg's jaw tighten, the familiar resolve that characterized their discussions. But today wouldn't be about old habits. It needed to break new ground. This isn't just my vision, he pressed on, his confidence growing. This is our opportunity to redefine ourselves. Catherine, a sharp-minded analyst known for her no-nonsense approach, crossed her arms as if bracing against the shift. You say that now, but how do you plan to ensure everyone feels comfortable sharing their voices? Alex felt the challenge deeply. Every word was a potential brick wall. You're right, Catherine, he replied sincerely. Creating a culture that fosters open dialogue takes effort. We need to hold casual brainstorming sessions where anyone can pitch ideas regardless of their role. There was silence, but Alex could feel the resistance loosening. He could almost hear the gears turning in their minds. Imagine the insights we could gain if every employee felt empowered to contribute, he continued, letting enthusiasm seep into his tone. We won't just be a top-down organization. Even as his words hung in the air, Greg leaned back, arms still crossed. And what do you have to back this up? Strategies. A wave of determination swelled in Alex. First, we need to focus on initiatives that build a sense of belonging. One way could be monthly gatherings where we can share successes and failures. Catherine exchanged glances with Greg. The tension in the room began to crack just slightly. And what are we supposed to do about our deadlines? Greg's gaze was still sharp, but there was now a hint of curiosity, a willingness to entertain the notion. Good point, Alex acknowledged. But think about it, when we rush through projects without collaboration, we lose the opportunity to innovate. Team members become burnt out and productivity plummets. Fostering a community approach, we intentionally lighten that load. Slowly, Greg uncrossed his arms, his body language shifting. As if sensing the tide flowing in Alex's favor, a new voice emerged from the back. It was Linda, an operations manager with a knack for practical solutions. I think what Alex is suggesting makes sense. Alex could hardly contain his excitement. Exactly, this way everyone can contribute their talents in smaller settings, making our big goals feel more attainable. The mood in the room began to thaw, and he could sense the change. Ideas were bubbling up, flowing over one another like a tide breaking against the shore. The cautious discussions turned into open debates. They began to bounce ideas off each other, incredibly alive with belief. As discussions deepened, they moved through various aspects of their operations. Innovations rolled in, from potential new products to customer engagement strategies. The prospect of collaboration lit a fire under their discussions. As the hours flew by, Alex felt invigorated. The contrast between this moment and the quiet doubts weeks earlier emerged starkly in his mind. Just last week, he had sat in a cafe, sketching out the future on a napkin, his dreams raw and unrefined. Today, those dreams were being transformed into shared aspirations. At the forefront of his mind was something he had learned through psychology. When people feel included, they're more likely to invest in the outcome. Trust could change the course of their journey. Visualize where we could be in a year, he urged, his voice amplifying with fervor in the boardroom filled with thinkers. But just as the atmosphere began to shift fully, Greg interjected again. And if this fails, Alex felt the gravity of his words, the seriousness that came with being a leader. Failure is part of growth, Greg. If we try and it doesn't work, we'll learn together. Greg's expression softened ever so slightly, and for the first time he paused, contemplating the reality of that statement. Catherine spoke up again, ambition twinkling in her eyes. Okay, let's assume we do this. What are the first steps? Great question, Alex said, exhilaration coursing through him. Let's establish a task force. Each department can send representatives to cultivate ideas that align with new initiatives. As the discussions continued, Alex felt like he was witnessing an orchestra come alive, a symphony of ideas harmonizing into a cohesive plan. A sense of exhilaration rolled through the room. Their previous reservations melted away like snow under the sun. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they began to wrap up their thoughts. The board members were animated, diving into details, the spirit of teamwork blossoming where there had been wariness before. Ideas flowed, names were assigned, and a timeline began to take shape. As they started to finalize their plans, Alex felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for this moment. He turned to the room, his heart racing. I want all of you to remember that this is just the beginning. We are crafting something incredible here, but we have to stay united. We support one another, we lift each other, and we hold ourselves accountable. Claps broke out around the table, applause rooted not in obligation but authentic appreciation. This moment was more than just a meeting, it marked the dawn of a new era. As the members began to leave, Greg approached him, a newfound respect shining in his eyes. You've managed to rally the troops, kid. Thank you, Greg, Alex replied, his heart swelling. Hearing those words meant more than he could express. This is just the beginning. Stepping outside the boardroom, Alex took in the cool air, the weight of anticipation shifting to a hopeful future. The hallway was filled with energy, vibrant and crackling with the promise of real change. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance, hurdles to confront, and challenges to face, but he felt equipped to navigate it all. What started as a quiet dream had morphed into a collective goal, and in that moment he felt not just the responsibility of leadership, but the power it carried. Today, Alex had walked into a boardroom filled with skepticism, and he had opened the door to possibility. A storm of emotions flooded his heart as he left the building, but they were no longer from fear or doubt. They were laced with passion and eagerness. Today had not just changed the way they would conduct meetings. It was a transformation that would carry through every project, every team, and every member of the company. With every step he took away from that building, the anticipation of tomorrow loomed like a sunrise waiting to break the horizon. Alex had waited in silence, but now, having spoken his truth, the world felt fully alive with potential, ready for the future they would create together. The clock ticked toward 11, the sound echoing through the sterile, fluorescent-lit hallway. Alex stood outside the boardroom, the sheer weight of expectation pressing down on him like a thick fog. He had waited for this moment for years, filled with quiet determination, late nights, and the often soul-crushing burden of feeling invisible. Today, he was about to walk into the room that had long felt like a fortress and claim it as his own. With his heart pounding, he wiped his clammy palms on his trousers and took a deep breath. Today wasn't just another meeting. Today, he would take the seat at the head of the table as the new chair of the board. Glancing at the sleek, polished door, he remembered the countless meetings he had attended as a silent observer. Each time he had dreamed of sharing his vision of leading the discussion. Today, that dream was about to turn into reality. Pushing the door open, he was met with a sea of surprised faces. The room fell silent, as if someone had pressed the pause button on an action movie. You could feel the disbelief hanging in the air. 15 seasoned executives, each one a giant in their field, sitting before him. He could see the confusion in their eyes, the whispers drifting from one corner of the room to another. "Good morning," he said, his voice breaking the silence like a chisel against stone. He walked to the head of the table, feeling each step resonate through the room. He took his seat, this solid, leather chair that symbolized his journey from an intern who barely spoke up to the person now commanding the attention of the room. Before we dive into the agenda, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work each of you contributes. Each one of you brings invaluable insight to this team, and it's important that we recognize that, Alex continued, meeting the eyes of the board members. Their expressions remained guarded, but he could see a flicker of curiosity. Greg, a senior member known for his snappy comebacks and razor-sharp wit, leaned forward. "That sounds nice, Alex, but we've heard this before, so what's your plan?" The challenge hung in the air like a desperate dare, and for a moment Alex felt the tide of uncertainty wash over him. But then he locked eyes with Greg, drawing strength from the resolve he had built over years of hard work. "Because I believe in this team," he replied confidently. "We can't just keep going through the motions." There was a pause, a moment where the room collectively inhaled. Alex sensed the skepticism, but also the crackling energy of potential. He pushed forward, carving out a space for his ideas. "I want us to begin with an open forum, an opportunity for everyone to share thoughts, ideas, and concerns without fear of judgment." Catherine, an analytical powerhouse with an eagle eye for details, raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan to facilitate that?" "Not everyone will feel comfortable speaking up, especially in this room." Alex smiled, ready for the question. "That's precisely why we need to create safe spaces for dialogue, starting with informal roundtable discussions where all voices are welcomed. Instead of waiting for ideas to trickle down, let's bring them up from the ground level." Some heads nodded, others looked on with a mix of intrigue and doubt. But Alex continued, feeling the rhythm of hope begin to envelop the room. "Imagine if we could harness the creativity and passion of every employee. We'd not only innovate but also strengthen our culture." Greg's skepticism remained, his arms crossed defiantly. "And what if these brainstorming sessions lead us down the wrong path? True change often feels chaotic at first," Alex countered. "But that's where innovation is born. Don't encourage different viewpoints, we'll remain stuck with the same outdated methods." Catherine added, "Okay, let's say we decide to do this. How do we ensure that people actually participate?" A spark ignited in Alex as he responded. "Let's set up a system where participation is recognized and rewarded. If someone contributes a valuable idea, let's celebrate it. Perhaps we could spotlight those initiatives in our company newsletter or hold competitions for the best ideas." Seeing the wheels begin to turn in the room, Alex pressed on. "A motivated team will not only be more productive, but will feel a deeper connection to our mission." One of the quieter board members, Linda, who had remained mostly silent, spoke up thoughtfully. "It sounds promising, but who decides which ideas move forward?" "Excellent point, Linda," Alex acknowledged, feeling the energy shift again. "We'll create task forces within each department to evaluate and prioritize the suggestions." More murmurs filled the boardroom, some supportive and others still cautious. but he could feel the atmosphere changing, shifting from doubt to intrigue. Let's visualize this. What if in 6 months we can look back and see measurable improvement, not just in productivity, but also in employee satisfaction? Time seemed to vanish as they moved together through a tapestry of ideas. They discussed strategies, specific goals, and how to integrate employee feedback into their operational processes. Alex felt a surge of life in the air, a collective excitement. People were getting invested. They shared laughter and camaraderie as they debated the feasibility of each idea. A powerful truth dawned upon Alex: real unity thrives on shared responsibility. In bringing them together, he found more than just allies, he found collaborators. But just as momentum peaked, the undeniable fear crept back. Greg spoke up again, an undertone of caution lacing his words. And if this fails? Alex paused, feeling the gravity of leadership pressing against his shoulders. He had learned through years in this industry that not everything would work out, and that embracing failure was part of the journey. Failure is never the end, it's a stepping stone. If we try and it doesn't succeed, we learn together, make the necessary adjustments, and keep pushing forward. For a moment, the room filled with silence as Greg considered the weight of Alex's words. Pivotal moment, one where vulnerability met resilience, and the trajectory of their meeting hung delicately in the balance. Catherine leaned in, visibly energized. All right, I like where this is heading. Let's establish a timeline for these initiatives. If we agree on a month to roll out our first employee forum, then we'll have a clear endpoint to evaluate participation and suggestions. Alex's excitement bubbled over. We'll set milestones to track our progress and ensure accountability. If things aren't moving as planned, we'll reassess while keeping the channels of communication open. Cheers erupted in the room, a sense of camaraderie forming around them as they leaned into the shared commitment to change. For the first time, they weren't just experts in their own fields, they were a team united with a common purpose. As they wrapped up their discussions, Alex felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction. The boardroom that had once felt intimidating now glowed with opportunity. He watched as faces, once filled with skepticism, were brightened by hope and determination. As they officially concluded the meeting, applause broke out, not merely as a formality, but as genuine acknowledgement of the new direction they had embraced. Alex felt the weight of gratitude wash over him as he knew this was more than just his victory. It was a victory for them all. Greg approached him after the meeting, a hesitant smile on his face. "You've got more in you than I gave you credit for." "Thanks, Greg," Alex replied sincerely. "I appreciate that. It's not just my ideas, it's ours moving forward." Walking out into the hallway, Alex took a deep breath, the weight of unspoken fears lifting off his shoulders as sunlight filtered in through the glass doors. The day felt bright with possibilities ahead, a vibrant canvas just waiting to be painted. As he stepped outside, he felt the cool breeze against his face, a refreshing reminder that he was no longer just a passive observer in the world of corporate boardrooms. He had stepped into a new role, one where he could shape not just his future, but the future of everyone in that room. His heart swelled with anticipation about what lay ahead. Today marked a turning point, and while the challenges would undoubtedly come, he felt more equipped to face them than ever before. He had waited in silence, uncertain and humble, but now he was walking into the light. Together with his team, they would harness their collective strength and creativity to transform not just their company, but the very fabric of their workplace culture. And as he walked away, he felt the exhilarating thrill of possibility, a promise that this journey was only just beginning. The clock's hands pointed to 12, and the muffled sounds from within the boardroom were like waves softly crashing against a distant shore. Alex stood outside, the weight of anticipation heavy in the air. This moment was everything he had worked for, a culmination of years spent fighting for recognition, for respect, and for a chance to lead. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, igniting a fire within him that would not be extinguished. He took a deep breath and let the silence envelop him. It was what he had grown accustomed to, the silence that came from being overlooked, from waiting his turn in a world filled with louder voices. But today, everything changed. Today, he would not just step into the boardroom, he would claim his place as the chair. With his heart pounding against his chest, he pushed the door open, the hinges creaking like an old ship. The room paused, conversations halting abruptly, eyes now fixed on him. 15 pairs of seasoned eyes, each filled with a blend of surprise, skepticism, and perhaps a hint of intrigue. For years, they had seen him as an invisible player on the board, an intern, a lower-ranked employee. Now he was here to redefine their perception. "Good morning, everyone," he stated, his voice steady, echoing slightly off the polished walls. As he walked toward the head of the long, gleaming table, he felt the energy shift. The faces he had previously regarded with a mix of admiration and trepidation were now a canvas on which he would paint a new vision. "Let's dive straight into the agenda," he said, taking his seat. Each member was still processing the shock of the new dynamic. The room was charged with an electric tension, a blend of uncertainty and anticipation. Greg, the most senior member, known for his sharp wit and even sharper tongue, broke the silence. "And what exactly do you plan to achieve today, Alex?" Alex met Greg's gaze, feeling his heartbeat quicken. He had expected this challenge. Respect isn't given, it's earned, and I plan to earn it from all of you starting right now, he responded, his voice firm. He could see some eyebrows arching in surprise at his boldness. He continued, we need to talk about our direction as a company. Times are changing and so must we. I believe our success depends not just on profits, it depends on people. Our culture, our values, our ability to adapt. The room hummed with whispers, the kind that usually meant skepticism, but today there was something different. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps it was a spark of hope. Questioned Linda, another seasoned board member known for her analytical mindset. Alex smiled, sensing a chance to engage. What if we started with something small, employee forums where everyone can voice their ideas, concerns, and potential solutions? There was an unsettled murmur in the room. Some members exchanged glances, weighing the merits of his suggestion. Alex pressed on, sensing the need to galvanize them. Imagine if every employee knew that their voice mattered. When people feel valued, they engage. Greg interjected again, still skeptical but now leaning with curiosity. Then we make it enticing, Alex replied confidently. What if we provide incentives for participation, maybe a monthly lunch where ideas are celebrated? Slowly changing expressions filled the room as heads began to nod. Alex felt a shift, a breakthrough inching closer. We must create an environment where everyone feels they are part of the solution. Some members shifted in their chairs, a sign of engagement. Alex seized the moment. Think about it, our most innovative ideas come from those who are closest to the work. Greg uncrossed his arms, the first sign of softening in his stance. Okay, let's say we go ahead with this. Alex felt a rush of energy. Let's propose a timeline. We can target the next month to roll out a pilot forum. Each department can select a representative to gather feedback and present ideas during our regular meetings. A wave of conversation washed over the boardroom. Ideas, concerns, and suggestions flew back and forth like a lively game of ping pong. Alex felt exhilarated. We're no longer just discussing policies, they were unraveling potential. Then, as his excitement peaked, another voice rose among the chatter. It was Thomas, an executive whose silence had often marked hesitation. And if this fails, Alex paused, feeling the weight of that moment. Failure isn't the end, it's part of learning. If one approach doesn't work, we adapt and try again. Silence fell again like a taut string waiting to snap. Greg surprised him by nodding slowly. There's value in that. Many of us have been in our roles for so long, we've forgotten what it feels like to innovate. The boardroom began to buzz with fresh ideas, and for the first time, Alex felt what he had only dreamed of, a true sense of collaboration forming. They were brainstorming ways to encourage employees to share insights. Someone suggested a creative day where teams could work on projects outside their usual responsibilities. Others began to talk about workshops to encourage team dynamics and creative thinking. Alex leaned back, absorbing the moment. He had gone from waiting in silence to orchestrating their thoughts like a conductor leading a symphony. They were no longer just figures in a meeting, they were agents of change. Much later, as their conversation began to wind down, Alex felt a sense of electric excitement in the air. He had not only held his ground, he had shifted the very dynamics of the room. They were enthusiastic, discussing action items and takeaways, a rhythmic exchange of potential rather than a stagnant flow of hierarchy. Let's agree on one thing before we finish, Alex proposed, his eyes scanning the room with intensity. We endeavor to approach this with boldness. Let's set measurable goals and check on them regularly. They agreed, and excitement buzzed through the room, but underlying that was something more profound, trust. The elders of the board now looked toward Alex with a new appreciation. He could see it in their eyes, a readiness to embrace change. As the meeting concluded, Alex reveled in the applause that echoed around him. It was not just for him, it was for the possibilities that lay ahead. He felt a rush of gratitude wash over him, gratitude for everyone in that room who had turned a moment of skepticism into one of opportunity. Greg approached him, a glint of acknowledgement in his eyes. You've got guts, kid. I didn't think you had it in you. Thank you, Greg. That means a lot coming from you, Alex replied, feeling a warmth wash over him. As he stepped out into the hallway, the heavy door closing behind him, Alex felt lighter than he had in years. He had stepped into that boardroom filled with doubt and walked out with a sense of purpose. The world outside welcomed him bright and vibrant. He strolled down the corridor, each step shedding the fear that had long weighed him down. The silent observer was gone, and in his place stood a leader ready to forge a new path. He could almost visualize the transformation taking place. The energy of collaboration would ripple through the halls, creativity sparking in every corner. Uncertainty would remain, he knew that. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but he felt equipped to face them, armed with the newfound determination radiating from his colleagues. They had placed their faith in him as he had placed his faith in them. The thrill of possibility electrified the air around him. Walking away from the boardroom wasn't just about leaving a meeting, it was about stepping into a future filled with potential. With every breath he took, he felt the weight of expectations shift. Alex had waited in silence for too long, and now he was ready to embark on this journey, leading not just with authority, but with empathy. A new chapter awaited, and for the first time, it felt like he would not be alone. Together, they would embrace change and craft a vision that would not just endure but thrive. As Alex stepped outside, he felt the sunlight break through the clouds, a seeping warmth that felt like an invitation. He was no longer waiting for change. He was the change, and the future had never looked more promising. The clock ticked ominously, each second feeling like an eternity. Outside the boardroom, Alex stood alone, heart pounding, palms sweating against the cool steel of the door. He had waited for this moment, but nothing prepared him for the weight of stepping into that room. This was not just a meeting, it was a threshold. Today, he would walk in as the new chair. Years spent in silence, observing rather than participating, led him to this very moment. As an intern, he had listened to others dominate conversations, his ideas often dismissed or ignored. But those days were behind him. Today, he would reclaim his voice. With a deep breath, Alex opened the door, the hinges creaking like a door to a long-forgotten world. The chatter ceased, eyes locking onto him like spotlights illuminating a stage. 15 pairs of seasoned eyes stared back, a mixture of surprise and skepticism painting their faces. He could feel the weight of their expectations. "Good morning, everyone," he said, projecting his voice into the room. The confidence behind his words felt strange, thrilling, foreign. He stepped forward, the polished floor reflecting the glow from the overhead lights, feeling the pull of the chair at the head of the table like a siren's call. He didn't just sit, he claimed his space. "I want to thank you all for being here today." The silence lingered, a palpable tension thickening the air. Greg, the oldest member and the ultimate decision-maker, leaned forward, arms crossed. Extraordinary. The challenge hung there, weighty and confrontational. Alex held his breath, ready to push back. "Because I care deeply about this company and everyone in this room. I've sat quietly, absorbing ideas and strategies, and I believe we can do better." Greg frowned, skepticism creasing his brow. "You talk about listening, but this isn't a therapy session. This is a corporation." "Precisely," Alex replied, feeling the adrenaline surge. "But what happens when our goals eclipse our people? We lose talent when they feel ignored. The market is shifting. We need to adapt or we'll be left behind." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Alex could sense the shifting of perceptions. He pressed on, leaning slightly forward, confident and impassioned. "Let's create an environment where every employee feels valued." Linda, known for her analytical approach, tossed her hair over her shoulder and interjected. "And how do you expect to facilitate that?" "True," Alex acknowledged, gratitude swelling for her honest question. "That's why we start with small, informal meetings, perhaps lunch brainstorming sessions where ideas are encouraged to flow freely." As he spoke, he noticed several members leaning in closer, the initial skepticism slowly beginning to fade. He felt a pulse of hope igniting in the room. "Imagine how powerful it would be if your ideas were part of our decision-making process." Greg remained stoic, but the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, betraying interest. "And what if these sessions yield ideas that lead us down the wrong path?" "Chaos is part of creativity," Alex replied boldly, his conviction unwavering. "If we create a culture where feedback is welcomed, we won't just take one path, we'll explore many." Catherine, another seasoned member who typically played it safe, chimed in. "You talk a big game, Alex, but we need metrics." "Great point," he replied, quickly brainstorming his response. "We introduce recognition and incentives for participation. Spotlight the contributions that come from these meetings, perhaps in our internal newsletter or during company-wide meetings." Conversation swirled in the room, energy building like a storm. Ideas floated and bounced off the walls, possibilities becoming tangible. Members exchanged looks, murmurs of agreement beginning to take root. Alex felt invigorated. This was the moment he had long envisioned, a shift from silence into a burgeoning dialogue. As discussions deepened, they moved from brainstorming sessions to exploring practical applications. What if they reshaped their onboarding processes to encourage sharing right from the start? What if they created task forces focused on innovation specific to each department? Time slipped away, but the atmosphere remained electric. Alex felt like he was conducting an orchestra, guiding each member to find their rhythm. They were no longer just colleagues staring at their phones, they were reimagining their future together. But as the brainstorming session crescendoed, doubt began to creep back in. Greg, arms still crossed, interjected again. "And what if this initiative fails? Failure is merely a stepping stone," Alex answered, solidifying his resolve. "Every setback is an opportunity to grow. If we try and it doesn't work, we will adjust, learn, and try again." A pause fell over the room, each member absorbing his words. Greg looked thoughtful, his tough exterior softening. "All right, Alex, let's say we give this a shot." He felt the adrenaline surge once more. "We begin with an employee forum in 1 month. Each department can select representatives who will synthesize feedback from their teams." Heads nodded and murmurs of agreement rippled through the boardroom. For the first time, Alex caught glimmers of hope sparkling in their eyes, a recognition that change might actually be possible. As they wrapped up their discussions, excitement surged through the room. No longer were they just a group of executives, they had become a collective, united by a shared vision. They agreed to sketch out their ideas into actionable plans, with each member eager to contribute. At the end of the meeting, as applause broke out, Alex felt a warm swell of pride. The energy in the room had shifted, and he had not only presented his ideas but opened a space for collaboration. As applause faded, a new doubt surfaced quietly in his mind, but he pushed it aside. This was what he had fought for. Greg approached him, offering a hesitant smile. "You've surprised me, Alex. I didn't think you had it in you." "Thank you, Greg. It's about us all moving forward together. I believe in this team," Alex responded, sincerity reflected in his eyes. Stepping out into the hallway, he exhaled slowly, filled with a blend of exhilaration and nervousness. This wasn't just about being the chair, it was about taking responsibility for a new direction. The world outside welcomed him, bright and bustling, full of opportunity. The corridor felt alive, tinged with the excitement of what lay ahead. He realized that he wasn't stepping away from the boardroom, but rather walking toward a future that felt more vibrant than ever. Day by day, he had observed, learned, and waited. Step by step, he had carved out his identity. As he headed to the elevator, he replayed the meeting in his mind. Each detail felt significant, the expressions of doubt that turned into curiosity, the conversations that flourished, the sense of hope that had swept them all. He could still hear the echoes of laughter and shared agreement, that sense of camaraderie where everyone began to feel valued. Arriving at his destination, the elevator doors opened slowly. The world outside felt charged, alive with possibilities. He had transformed something stagnant into a movement forward. But as his excitement built, he felt the weight of responsibility settle in, a reminder that this was just the beginning of their journey. There would be obstacles, he knew that. There would be doubts to overcome, resistance to face. But for the first time, he felt equipped to confront whatever lay ahead. Together, as a team, they would rise. Stepping outside, sunshine bathed his face, enveloping him in warmth. The air felt different. It was filled with promise. Today had not just been another day in the office. It had been a turning point, a moment that would carry them all into a future filled with collaborative dreams. With each step toward his car, he felt reinvigorated. Alex had waited in silence for far too long, but today his voice had echoed through the boardroom, igniting a fire that would not easily be extinguished. And as he drove away from that building, a flicker of determination burned deep within him. This was just the beginning of a thrilling chapter, one he would write together with his team, thriving not just for themselves, but for the entire company. The road ahead was open, limitless, and filled with promise. Together, they would chart a new course, opening doors to innovation, engagement, and ultimately success. The silence had been shattered, and a vibrant future lay waiting before them. The clock's hands inched toward 10, each tick slicing through the heavy silence of the corridor. Alex stood just outside the boardroom, heart pounding like a furious drummer in his chest. Today, all those years of waiting, watching, and dreaming were about to culminate in a defining moment. He wasn't flipping through notes or rehearsing a speech. No, it was time to step into what had felt like a distant dream for so long, time to walk into the boardroom as its new chair. With a tentative hand, he brushed his fingers against the cool surface of the door, feeling its solid presence. Inside, he could hear the muted voices of seasoned executives, a mixture of authority and skepticism that echoed from the walls. He felt a rush of memories, the countless meetings where he had sat quietly, brimming with ideas, yet too intimidated to speak up. But today was different. Today he would claim his voice, his place. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open. The hinges creaked as if announcing a new chapter. The room instantly fell silent, and 15 pairs of eyes turned towards him. The air felt thick with expectation, a palpable tension that could be sliced with a knife. There was Greg, the older board member with a reputation for his sharp tongue. He wore skepticism like a badge, as if daring Alex to stumble. "Good morning, everyone," Alex said, his voice echoing off the polished wood. He walked toward the head of the table, a space he had dreamed of occupying for years. As he took his seat, a wave of determination washed over him. He wasn't just there by chance, he had earned this moment. "I want to thank each of you for being here today. I know this might come as a surprise, but I believe in the potential of what we can achieve together." You could see Greg's brow furrow. "And what makes you think you can lead?" Alex caught his gaze unfazed. "Yes, but I've spent years listening and observing. I understand our strengths and our weaknesses. Our industry is evolving, and so must we. If we remain stagnant, we risk losing our competitive edge." Within the somber atmosphere, a flicker of curiosity sparked among the board members. Catherine piped up, known for her logical approach. He felt the tension swell, but met her eyes with confidence. "I propose we start by implementing regular forums for all employees to share their ideas. We need to make sure that everyone feels their voice matters." A quick stir of whispers filled the room. Alex felt the surge of energy like a rising tide. This could be the turning point. Imagine how it would feel if we could harness the creativity of our teams. They are the front line, they understand our customers better than we do. But Greg, ever the skeptic, leaned back, arms crossed. "And when these forums yield ideas that lead us off track, change is never easy, Greg," Alex replied, his resolve hardening. "But if we don't embrace a little chaos, we'll never know what might work." The most successful companies thrive on feedback and collaboration. Risks can also lead to failure, Greg shot back. And it's in that failure that we grow, Alex countered, feeling the energy shift in his favor. Each misstep is a lesson. Linda, known for her sensible approach, chimed in. But you're suggesting we could disrupt our entire process. He shot back, surprised at the fierceness of his own voice. Let's start with small wins. We can introduce a pilot program, allow each department to implement their own changes based on employee feedback. For the first time, Alex saw intrigue glimmer in their eyes. They weren't just skeptical, they were considering possibilities. A collective energy filled the room as voices began to carry, sharing thoughts and brainstorming ideas, their earlier hesitation fading into a shared goal. Then let's have this pilot program, Greg finally conceded, arms uncrossing. A ripple of anticipation swept through the group as Alex's heart raced. They were forming something new, something alive. Ideas poured forth, expanding well beyond what he had imagined. They discussed everything from revamped training sessions to innovative employee engagement strategies, each suggestion building upon the last like an intricate layer of a beautiful cake. Hours slipped by unnoticed as the conversation became a harmonious blend of theory and practicality. But even as excitement surged, a whisper of doubt crawled into Alex's mind. What if they failed? What if the initiatives fell flat and he would be the one responsible? But he shook off that thought. He had spent far too long in silence, overshadowed by doubt. Today felt different. Today he felt alive. As the meeting drew to a close, they began drafting a plan, a tangible roadmap filled with milestones. Each person left the room brimming with possibility, enthusiasm ricocheting behind their serious faces. The boardroom that had once seemed daunting and foreboding now felt warm and inviting. Let's see where this goes. I'm cautiously optimistic, Greg said, a newfound respect brewing in his voice. As they filed out, Alex lingered a moment, feeling triumph wash over him. He had not only claimed his seat at the table, he had fostered unity among a diverse group of experienced voices. This was just the beginning, but as he stepped outside into the cool air, a heavy feeling settled in his stomach just as the door behind him clicked shut. The energy that had filled the room was intoxicating, but it was paired with a burgeoning weight of responsibility. He could already imagine the phone calls and emails filling his inbox. The thrill was intoxicating, however, with each step down the hall, the thrill faded slightly, replaced by the reality of what lay ahead. It was time to bring his vision to life, and the pressure felt overwhelming. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a text from an unknown number, and the message sent shivers down his spine. Nice job today, Alex. Just remember, not everyone is on your side. His heart raced as he stared at the screen, uncertainty creeping in. Who could it be? Panic swelled within him, amplifying the doubts that had just begun to wane. He looked around the bustling office, the noise of colleagues chatting and laughing suddenly feeling menacing. Who could be conspiring against him? Had he misjudged the trustworthiness of his own team? Alex took a deep breath, trying to shake off the dread starting to coil in his chest. But in that moment, he realized he was stepping into a much larger game than he had anticipated. As he walked to his car, the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting it in shades of orange and red. It was beautiful yet eerie, mirroring the tumultuous feelings churning inside him. The world outside appeared calm and inviting, but he felt like he was standing on the edge of a brewing storm. Where do you go from here when the road ahead seems filled with shadows? Would he continue to pursue his vision, knowing that adversaries might lurk within familiar faces? As he drove away, Alex glanced in the rearview mirror, not just seeing the road behind him, but also the ghosts of doubt that could chase him in this new chapter. Today marked a bold new beginning, but who would he have to fight to achieve it? The cliffhanger gripped him tightly. Alex had dared to step into the light, but a shadow now loomed over his ambitions. Who was behind the message? And how could he reconcile his hope for change with the dangers lurking in the unlikeliest of places? The game was just beginning.